I don't get dressed up very often, but one of the first situations in my life where I needed to was for high school debate. And so I would borrow some of my brother's dress clothes, and when I came home, I would just kind of take the dress pants and just drape them over the hanger. As seems simple, but of course is going to lead to some wrinkles, doesn't have the creases in the right places. There's a certain way to fold dress pants to put them through a hanger better. And my dad noticed this. He said, you know, do you need help knowing how to fold these dress pants? Because, you know, I say I hadn't done it a whole lot, so for all he knew, I didn't know. And I said, oh, no, I know how to do it. And he pointed out, but I hadn't. That knowing didn't actually serve the purpose here. We need to actually still do the thing. And this is something that actually pervades a lot of game development thinking. A lot of people new to game development having this problem thinking that knowing it somehow can compensate for not doing it. But in fact, no amount of knowing ever takes the place of actually doing it. For, you know, a handful of other kind of examples, these sort of things come up in that if someone's playing a sport and the ball rolls past them and they say, oh, I knew I was supposed to get that ball and throw it back, they're not somehow getting credit for that. That doesn't replace throwing the ball back. That if anything, puts more scrutiny on, then why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do the thing you knew you were supposed to do? And so often people want to consider that if they just think enough about it, if they think enough about making games, game development, game design, that is somehow equivalent or can make up for the fact they haven't really done anything yet. One of the other reasons why it's problematic is that particularly when it comes to building things and creating things and crafting things, whether we're talking wood or stone or writing with words, making music or making games, the act of creation tends to play a role in giving us constant, really minor feedback from the platform itself, from the medium itself, as to the kind of things it likes to do and what works in it. Chris Crawford, classic game designer from decades ago, referred to this as working with the grain of the wood, that carpenters cut woods in certain ways to maintain strength and structure, and they're easier to cut in certain directions, and they support weight better in certain directions. They look better in certain directions. And the same thing's true, as Chris Crawford pointed out, with the digital medium. In terms of when you're programming computer games, there's reasons why certain kinds of behaviors and structures and patterns are more common, are easier to do, or are harder. And while it may seem like, okay, well, as a designer, I don't want to have to think about those things, the reality that winds up happening is that knowing those difficulties, knowing the realities of the implementation details, can lead to trade-offs in a way of why I can have 3, 5, 10, 15 of these kind of features, or 2, 3, 4 of those kind of features done very, very well, or equivalently taking that same amount of energy, effort, time, resources, and doing this one other kind of feature very poorly, stretching ourselves very thin, maybe failing to achieve that goal at all from underestimating the difficulty and what goes with the grain of how a computer thinks, how programming works, how development practices fit together, how assets work in games. Those are things why, for game designers, especially, you know, my background is largely as a technical game designer. It's kind of my core focus area. I really find it valuable. And there are designers in the world who do not program, not to overstate this case. But for the vast majority, it winds up being very, very helpful to have exposure to rapid prototyping on a machine with a computer, some programming, some scripting, being able to script for level design, learning enough programming to be able to build their own games, if only to inform the process. So if they ever do find their way to a more pure design role in terms of documentation, whiteboarding, making convincing arguments to producers, that they can then work from an informed base of having a sense for what's going to make sense on a machine and what won't, from experience working with materials. That until you've done that, you're really not engaging with design in a sense of any sort of informed way you can do something with. And this all goes back to, once again, that thinking about it can't replace the act of doing it. That any more than, you know, knowing I should have exercised doesn't actually, at any level, in any way, replace, but did I do it? And the same thing affects us in business all the time of knowing what to do can't replace actually doing it. And to go back to our opening, me knowing that there's a certain way I'm supposed to fold those pants, but not bothering to do it, didn't really help. You got to do it. Doing it's what it's all about. That's one of the things that I like about game development. It helps us very objectively measure from ourselves, are we doing the thing that we mean to be doing, that we think we know how to do, and then seeing, as we improve at that process, the more and more we make games. But that's it for today. Thanks for always tuning in. Over the next couple of weeks, and maybe not tomorrow's episode or the one after that, but sometime coming up soon, since my wedding is Saturday, we have all rehearsal events and other things leading up to that. I'm actually still going to keep up these daily videos, kind of. So I started doing these daily videos August 1st, so now I've been going for a couple of months. And what I'm going to do for the time that I'm away is since I guess mid 2015, I've been doing a podcast on a regular basis, and that's interviews with game developers, and those are audio only. But for the time when I'm away, I'm going to be setting up some highlights from, I've gotten over 85 of those episodes now, and I'm going to be picking some highlight episodes from that, kind of first a handful of the first few ones, and then some sort of episodes throughout that I thought were particularly good kind of cross-sectional interviews from industry, people I think you might want to hear from. And so I'm going to be resharing those to YouTube, knowing that these reach a different audience than necessarily subscribers to the podcast. But so look for those coming up soon in the weeks ahead. And like I say, I might still fit in another video or two daily, but thereafter, while I'm away traveling for honeymoon and such, and day of the wedding, it's going to instead be some podcast interviews with game developers, people from the game industry, varying levels of experience, AAA, indie, people who started a long time ago, people who started recently, like I say, cross-section of people who are making games, so you can better help hear their stories and figure out what kind of path might interest you in this line of practice. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye for now.